I'd rather create something that others criticize than create nothing and criticize others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures. It's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, James Henderson, and today Eddie Brook takes us through his entrepreneurial journey as the founder of the Cape Byron Distillery. He shares his why and the importance of story and a good narrative behind your business. There's so much value in the episode today, and I really hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, Eddie.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure to be here.
The way that I like to start off the show is by asking, do you have a crazy hospitality story?
Crazy hospitality story. I suppose there's so many stories. Like I've probably gone from the start, I started from the very bottom in hospitality, from cleaning toilets down at the stock exchange where it all started to now.
Oh man, me too.
Yeah, it's what a learning, all the way up to, from those, those fabled Monday night dance competitions all the way to brand ambassador and now starting my own distillery. So I suppose I've got quite a few stories from different aspects, but
it can be as PG as you decide. But what I'd like to know is, have you seen anything crazy in the bar? Crazy, interesting, exciting, even something, maybe you've seen a patron do something weird, or there's all kinds of stories have come up so far.
Oh, mate, strange ones. Well, there was always the nudity, there was the song closures at Canvas there for a while, which is always a fun way to finish off and clean the bar. But no, I think you always got to get up to a bit of fun as a team when you finish up on a long night. A bit of mischief.
Yeah, love it. Well, Eddie, my first question, really, getting into the episode, is a big one. I'd like to know why you do what you do.
That's a good one. Why I do what I do. I'm a true believer in always going back to that, and I always try to peel back to, I suppose, what's the reason that drives me, or why do I get out of bed in the morning? And it's quite funny, I've sort of done a fair few things in different parts of the industry, but starting this distillery, for me, this is starting a new family business. We're driven by being generational. But the thing that really excites me and drives me is, showcasing and educating people about a thing that I'm really passionate about, which is, education about rainforest regeneration, especially in our pocket of the world. And that education around it. And that's what really, I suppose, gets me excited about the industry. The reason we're here is from 30 years ago, from when we started our journey in rainforest regeneration, and from that rainforest to the flavors that, we've got in our gin today. So there's excitement in the industry and everything along the way. But when it comes down to it, it's that training and that education, giving bartenders and people that experience about going back to nature and what it used to be that, really, really sort of drives me.
I really like that. That's an awesome why. And it's, a lot of people don't think about that big picture. They don't think about, on a macro level, why it is that they're doing what they do. And it's awesome that you say that you think about that and you keep coming back to that. Before we really delve into what it is you do now, I'd like to know what drove you to get into hospitality. Did you fall into it, or did you want to get into hospitality? What happened?
Yeah, I've sort of had everyone's got their unique journey. I started when I was quite young. My parents, I grew up on a macadamia farm in the hinterland of Byron, and from that, my parents had this crazy idea of using macadamias as a product or adding value to that macadamia, and we started a food company. From that, Mum was making it at home, and we were selling it at the markets. And
what was the food?
It's called Brook Farm. So we make macadamia mueslis and oils.
Oh,
and,
cool.
Yeah, it's quite funny from that early stage. From making it at home. Quite blessed now. We make everything, but we employ over 70 people now for that business, which is incredible and still all family owned, and there's that sort of family drive. But for me, I started in kitchens. As soon as I was 14, I started working in the beach hotel in Byron Bay, and I loved it. There's something about when I was young working in the kitchens, it was that adrenaline of service.
Yeah.
And it was funny, it just stuck with me, there was even the adrenaline of prep shift, We had one of the guys I work with who was the chef, Stephen Durant. And this guy, you could feel his presence in the room, like the best compliment you could get was nothing, was silence, that's, you didn't get a clip around the back of the head. But for me, I sort of idolise having people in my career that sort of, I mentored or aspired or even, learnt a lot from. But yeah, it started in the kitchens, and then actually I moved to Brisbane when I was 17, started university here, and I sort of fell into the bar industry. I had a mates that were glassying, and I got the opportunity as a glassy, and I remember there was, I remember I was in the Stocky. I was a young 17-year-old bartender or glassy, and there was guys in the bar, and they were throwing bottles around, and I was like, those guys have got it made, like that's cool. And I was like, right, how do I become a bartender? And it was from there, and I fell in love with this. I remember the very first bar training I went to, I can't remember who it was, but it was, seeing an ambassador talking about spirits, and I was just like, wow, that's cool, that's good, and
that was like me with Jamie Fleming.
Yeah, right.
Exactly the same experience.
Yeah.
So please continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. And I remember, and I was like, well, how do I do that? How do I get to there? And I was studying, and but I really fell in love with the hospitality and side of things, and started as a bartender, and then started learning at different cocktail bars, and just fell in love with trying to get better at the craft. And for me, growing up, it's always been I've always been fascinated with flavour. And, from an early age of blending flavours, from cooking and, growing up, going to markets and, bringing that, I suppose, blending or perfecting that over the bar was something I was passionate about. And as well, I just loved, the social side of it, talking to people over the bar,
the bar banter.
The bar banter, and the people you meet, like over a bar, the chats you have with customers, and, you might never meet them again, but you sort of shared that experience. And I really love that side of the industry. And, so that sort of led me, and I worked in a few different bars and cocktail bars, and got my first shot as an ambassador for South Trade. And, I was looking after doing some training for Buffalo Trace and Brook, and it sort of led me down the line where I am today, and Green Fairy Absinthe and all these, quite eclectic mix of brands. And, so all of a sudden you get thrown into that realm that you're to be empowered with knowledge to pass on to other people. So you're like, geez, right, your level of study of knowledge, again, you take it up to that next level. So, it's like the age old, if you can teach someone, your knowledge, you've got to have a lot more knowledge than anyone else in that, or enough knowledge on that topic to be able to teach someone. Fell on down that track and just fell in love with it, but I fell in love with the stories of brands and ones that had some real truth to them. This day and age, it's, we're in this age where it's completely transparent, brands that don't have a true, authentic story, or that are sort of marketed or made up around a boardroom. You get a sense from them, or you see through them. So I love working on brands that I could truly believe in. Like the Buffalo Trace guys, amazing distillery there, but in particular Brook, which just fell in love with that story and what it was, and I suppose led me down to where I am.
Well, you've mentioned story there. I personally think the success in an early stage business, or in any business really, is about having an authentic story. Just having something that is congruent with what the founders are actually about, or what that business is actually about. And in previous episodes, I believe it was with Dan Norris, we talked about a lot of different marketers, like Seth Godin and Gary Vee and whatnot. Do you follow any marketers yourself?
I do, yeah.
From the words you've been using, I can tell.
Yeah, I truly believe, I truly believe in, going back to why is a big thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And
Have you read Start With Why?
Yeah. What's his name? I actually went to a talk by
Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek. Yeah. I was fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And I suppose growing up in a family business, where we're completely generational and it's family owned, starting from those basic things, from making it at home to now growing that, you know, I was part of growing that company, but you know, for me, that's more of a brother or a sister to me rather than something that I actually grew myself. I've always fascinated about, you know, what drives people, from people that work with you. You know, how do you get them to believe in what you believe, and you know, and I think that's one of the strongest things, rather than incentivizing people through money, is, you know, it's going back to, you know, are you authentic, and are you actually standing for something, and do you believe it? And but I
People see through that if you're not.
oh, absolutely, yeah. But I try to keep up, and I'm always, you know, blown away as well in the world of marketing. I can't keep my finger on the pulse all the time, but it's just incredible.
I don't think anyone can, really.
But I do try to keep on the ball as much as I can.
I want to delve into a little more about what you do now.
Yep.
So tell us a bit about what it is that you actually do.
Yeah. So
or what you're building now.
You know, we're sitting here now with a couple of bottles of Brookies on our table.
Oh, actually,
here.
let's crack it.
I think it'd be rude not to.
Let's
right?
do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oof.
Oh, man.
There it is.
I hope
There
we
it
got a
is.
little sound clip in there.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
nice one.
Mm.
Thank you very much. That is
That's
lovely. I
Nice
tried.
little straight gin there.
I actually tried Brookies over at Electric Avenue.
Oh, cool.
And it was
yeah.
delicious. I thought it was fantastic. One of the best gins I'd ever had.
Oh,
And then
brilliant.
I wanted to connect with you, so I reached out on Facebook.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Yeah, it's amazing how social media can do that. You know, it's brilliant. But so you know, we're here today. You know, to go back in November, we finished our distillery. You know, I suppose going back even further than that, 30 years ago, this is really where it all started. It seems crazy to go back all that way, but my parents, Pam and Martin, bought a property in Byron Bay. And this was just a rundown dairy farm. It was 95 acres, and this was, you know, denuded landscape. That farm, or that plot of land, used to be part of a giant rainforest called the Big Scrub. Now, over the last sort of 200 odd years, you know, we look out now in the hills around Byron, and especially around this area, and we see these sort of great rolling pastures, and they look very pretty. But what that used to be was this giant, amazing rainforest, similar to, say, what the redwood forest over in the States is, you know, with these giant cedar trees, you know. And this big scrub rainforest is one of the true lungs of Australia. Anyway, the folks bought it and set about planting macadamias, and by no means did we have farming pedigree in our blood, you know, like we had. So if you want to know the secret, you know, mum was a dentist and dad was a film producer. You know,
Right.
You always couldn't get further from farming pedigree, you know. But they set about planting macadamias. This was the idea. But what actually they fell into, and you know, how it actually happened was the council issued a weeds notice, pretty much saying your property's overgrown with, you know, lantana and weeds. You need to clear it up. And now, absolutely no idea how that, you know, to do that. So they started talking and learning from different people, and in that process, you know, instilled this passion for rainforest regeneration. And so over the last 30 years now, we replanted well over 35,000 rainforest trees. And that is, you know, that rainforest is the heart of what we do. So, so we started our distillery and custom built our distillery that sits amongst our rainforests and macadamia and trees, and we distill distill our gin from there. You know, which we create Brookies. So it's pretty exciting to what can happen in a short period of time. But
What is it that Brookies does differently to other gin brands?
I suppose for us, what we try to do is really showcase our area through our flavour or through the products that we use. So, you know, generally gin, you know, uses mainly juniper and other dried botanicals that are generally brought in from overseas. Some native ones. It's amazing, you know, in the world in Australian gins, And I think we're bringing a lot of light to native botanicals. But the world I was brought up in, and from the people I've learned from, what we have in the rainforests of Northern Rivers is the ultimate pantry for making gin. Like you say, you've got, anise is a flavour in gin. Here we got, have a smell of this.
Oh, cheers.
So crush that
So
one
you've got
up
all of
and,
it for me ready today.
I pack the rainforest wherever I go.
Yeah.
So.
That smells fantastic.
So this here is called aniseed myrtle. It's kind of like the lesser known, the sister that was never invited to the ball. Lemon myrtle always gets the limelight. But from that we've got aniseed and cinnamon myrtle that grows in our rainforest. It's a variety of different citrus. And citrus is a big part of gin. We've got ones native to our area of Northern Rivers. I talk about Northern Rivers, which is an area that goes from sort of Tweed Heads down to sort of Dorrigo and a bit further south, that sort of region. But so much, finger lime. There's over 60 different varieties that grow.
That's crazy.
In and around our area, and we're sort of blessed to work with a lot of great growers and suppliers of it. You take, ryeberry, a fruit grows on the lily pilly tree. We've got, I think we've got 5 different varieties just growing on our farm alone. So this world that that we've got and what I grew up in and our flavours, we try to showcase that, and we showcase through using those flavours. A lot we pull straight from our rainforest, but for this we're using 26 different botanicals going in here to our Brookie's dry gin. But
is that a normal amount of botanicals?
As for us it is.
Yeah.
Generally the dry gins will use maybe only 6 to 9, and it's never about how many botanicals. It's quite funny. It's for me, it comes back to flavour balance, and I talk about balance a lot, and rather than citrus, you could just use lemon peel and you get an element of citrus, which is nice. But we look around off citrus. So for us, lemon doesn't just give us the flavour we're after. So we're using, native finger limes. We're using white aspen berries, which are a native Australian berry, and you pick them off the tree and they taste like lemon lime sorbet. These things, they're just bonkers.
Is it only Australian flora that you use?
No, we still use some really traditional flavours of gin. There's one rule: for a gin to be a gin, it's got to be a spirit or alcohol flavoured with gin. That's it. That's our rule book. So for us, we haven't had an industry of growing, these flavours to use for a product, so we can't call up, Bill the farmer and go, mate, how's your crop of juniper? We haven't had a market for it. So what's exciting is now we've got a decent industry. So there's now reason for farmers to start growing this produce, to start putting juniper in the ground. We've been growing coriander here, so we use Australian coriander seed, of course, but things like angelica root, is a big part. Orris root, we haven't had an industry or reason for it.
And we are an agricultural economy.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. We've obviously got a lot of space to be able to utilise. So that'd be awesome if we can find regions in Australia to be doing it.
And that's right, and I think we will. That's where it's sort of growing is, we've now got, I can't even remember how many gin distilleries in Australia. I'm going to say, well above sort of 15 or 20 distilleries in Australia making gin. That's an industry. That's an industry. Go back 8 years ago, that didn't exist. So it's quite exciting, and the agriculture side of it, and we already work with farmers in our area growing native produce. We're getting them to put in more native produce that we can't get our hands on, such as white aspens and more Davidson plums and things like that. So encouraging that farming so we can use that as in an end product.
How do you create a distillery? How do you just create it?
Well, it's funny. Like I don't tell too many people this, but I was sitting. One of the there's key moments. But where I think when you look back and there's key chapters or turning points, and I was sitting. We did a whiskey, a Brook Laddie and a few other whiskies. A session at a bar called the Roadhouse Bar in Byron Bay, and I was there with after an event there with Mum and a good mate of mine. And we were there, we imbibed obviously a few whiskies, and then we were sitting there going, why not? Why can't someone create a distillery? And and I think that's one of the first points. Of just go, why not? Don't be afraid to challenge. And so that's where it sort of this idea started. But then you walk away and you go, geez, how do we actually start this distillery? And this idea was there, and but some ideas, you park them for a while. So we put it on a shelf, and years went by. I was still in the industry, but for me, the big turning moment, I suppose, the reason why I'm here and talking about a gin that I helped create and produce now, is when I got to meet a gentleman by the name of Jim McEwen. This guy, a lot of people may have heard of him. This guy's done it all, like a Hall of Fame distiller, 3 times awarded Master Distiller of the Year, he created the Botanist Gin, ex-Master Distiller of Brook. This guy's just, he's just someone when I learned to talk about whiskey, and every single YouTube video possible I'd watch of him, and breathe that in, and idolize this guy. And I was really so fortunate enough to put on a tour for this guy around Australia.
Awesome.
And
so you would have learned heaps from him there.
Oh, but it was just like, imagine, I use this sort of analogy, imagine it was more like being a young boxer and being able to put on a tour for Muhammad Ali. It was that sort of in my mind, and how high I held him in regards. But during that tour, as you do, you get to know each other, and it was when we got to connect, and I told him about what my family's really passionate about. And there is never, ever in a million years would I ever put a business or an idea to a gentleman like Jim, but it was when I told him about what we're passionate about and what drives us, and the flavours that are there. I was like, Jim, you've never, aniseed myrtle, citrus, we've got the rye berries and all these different flavours. And he literally grabbed me. He's a man of karma, Jim. He talks about this idea or serendipity, and he's like, "We were meant to meet," And I was like,
"Yeah,
geez, what?" I'm pinching myself and he's like, "We were meant to meet, and we were meant to start this distillery together."
Yeah,
and I was there like, "All right,
yeah."
What do you say?" To this guy.
Say okay, yeah.
And that was it. So to have someone like Jim that's been in this that has all that knowledge, and this man has been a master distiller for how many years, and so he really was such a figure role into creating, when we were designing the distillery, but even from our still that we had custom made from us, the shape and the botanical basket and the line arm, the extended swan neck, all of that came from his input, obviously, and I'm so fortunate enough to learn from him, and he sort of mentored and trained me in distillation, but doing it the old way, that sort of real traditional method, rather than relying on so much, I suppose, so much modern technology. These guys have been distilling, perfecting this art, and it truly is an art for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's sort of paying homage to those sort of traditional methods, but showcasing what we've got, which is in an incredible environment and sort of flavour profile here.
Can you tell us about the creative process behind making a gin?
Yeah. It's quite a fun one, really.
Yeah.
You take Jim. Jim created the Botanist Gin. Comes from Islay, little island off the southwest of Scotland. Now, he created that gin to showcase, what was going on Islay, and they've got some amazing things that grow there. One thing Islay doesn't have is a lot of trees. It's pretty barren, pretty battered by the elements, this place. But, from different bog myrtles and mosses and these quite incredible stuff, and they got that from working with botanists. So Jim had never, ever worked or tasted native Australian flavours. And there'd be, so many conversations. I'd call him up. I'd be painting these pictures in his mind's eye. For me, this has been my upbringing. I've, been regenerating rainforests, from picking Davidson plums, and can't help myself even now. And my friends will tell me, we're walking down the street, picking leaves off and smelling them. And it's just, that's just me. And I've always been fascinated with flavour and different native flavours. So it was this culmination of that. Jim has obviously perfected knows how to balance, and especially in the world of gin, gin, the two big pillars are juniper and coriander. They really set your backbone of gin. And then it's about, and Jim talks about this idea, it's almost like building a piece of music or, creating a piece of artwork, like imagine looking and staring at a blank canvas. So, your backdrop starts with your spirit, and for us we use an Australian wheat spirit and water. So we use a Mount Warning spring water, a pure spring water, and that's your blank canvas. Then your juniper and coriander go up, and that's sort of 60%. That's your backdrop. And this is where this idea of balance and brushstrokes come in. So he never worked with native Australian flavours, so I brought him into my world. So for the first 2 weeks, it was immersing him in native Australian flavours. So my dad, who's very passionate about the rainforest, and Jim's nickname is the cask whisperer. That's what he's known as, because he's a bit bonkers like that. He's out there in warehouses talking to casks. He truly believes that, the casks are so important, and which they are, but, it goes beyond that. He sees casks as a mother, and that child is that spirit that gets born into that cask. And, you give a child to a mother that's without life or been, through 4 kids already or whatever, it doesn't have a lot to give, rather than one that's, full of life and energy. It's going to impart a lot more,
that's really interesting.
Flavor. Yeah, and it's this way of looking at it. Like spirit goes beyond, and when he's looking at creating, it goes beyond. It's not just making a product, and this is one thing I really learned from him. It's more than that. You talk to people about that make scotch that are really passionate about it, or spirits in different parts of the world. It's the spirit of them rather than just, making a product. But yeah, so it's about, we had so many flavors at our fingertips. So we sort of look at going, right, what's our sort of style of gin we want to create? And we looked at all our flavors. So distilling all of our native flavors individually. And it was literally like, recreating that recipe or recreating our flavors that we wanted. And there was so many that didn't make the cut. Like lemon myrtle is a great example. Lemon myrtle, I think, is great, but doesn't play a role for us in our gin. I think, we talk about lemon myrtle, we have a bit of fun with it, but lemon myrtle for us is almost like we've all got a mate like lemon myrtle. Like if there was 25 of us standing at the bar, lemon myrtle would stand out like a sore thumb. He'd be the one screaming at the top of his lungs. He doesn't balance out with everyone for our style of gin that we want to create. And it's all comes back to balance and rebuilding those personalities, say citrus or tea-like characteristics or our floral notes, and it's building it back from the ground up.
Thank you for such a deep.
I
love all your really deep answers.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're and you've obviously thought a lot about the why behind what you do. And I'm so glad I asked that question first.
Yeah.
More into it, I want to sort of go to a more technical aspect into building the business.
Yep.
Did the brand turn out the way that you imagined it would look like? Or in terms of, I want to sort of look at your vision for how things were going to unfold. Did it go the way that you planned?
It's funny, like the process when we started, and I look back, if I could put myself back in my head when we started, you have no idea of foresight or how it's going to turn out. And we had, I suppose where we started was, right, what are things that are really important or key to us? And that was the rainforest. It's our reason for being. But it also is comes back to us being a family generational business. And I use the term generational because it is just that. We're not going to be a flash in the pan business or distillery. We're here for the long haul. The thing that gets excited. My brother's got 2 little ones that run around the distillery. And to see them, to pass something on to them, and hopefully one day I'll have kids of my own. Like that gets me more excited than building something up and selling it on. But I suppose those were the sort of few key pillars. So that's, I suppose, where our name and, the first thing we started with actually was the bottle. And you talk about it. The bottle for us, we fell in love with the shape and the idea of it. And it's almost like, it's like the feeling of opening and shutting a good car door. Like if you got to a really nice car, it's got a feel to it, a weight. It's like, you can hear that sound and you can feel it. It's there. It's tangible in your hands. But we wanted to bring it back to the family. So, And this name, Brookies, was probably one of the very first or second names we ever came up with. But it was funny, we were like thinking that it's too simple, So we were like, no, we'll park it back. And where this name comes from is, we're the Brook family. My dad, from dad's side, that name comes from. He's from the UK. And when he first came to Australia and, met mum's parents, we have this way in Australia. He was never Martin or he was never Mr. Brook. He was Brookie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this, nickname that he was given to him and he almost couldn't shake. But that grew on him and he is now Brookie, So it's this, and for us, we want something that people could, almost, that it could become theirs, I'll have a Brookies or I'll have a this and that, a Brookies Martini, and that sort of, that idea is quite nice. But yeah, we started with those few core pillars, I suppose, or things that drive us or where we wanted to go. And it's amazing you go down the process. We found an amazing designer. We put it out to tender, but the designer we picked probably wouldn't be a normal way of doing it. But we went and I, interviewed and put it out to tender and went and interviewed all these guys because the main thing that we wanted to get conveyed was what we're really passionate about, which is, again, coming back to that rainforest and our family and use of, things we're passionate about, even down to, our labels printed on, recycled sugarcane.
Mm-hmm.
So we found them and, all these other things just sort of fall into place. But I think you've got to start and have an idea of, I suppose, why you do, again, coming back to this, why are you doing it? What are your reasons for being? And that'll set you off on a good path, but they're all different, everyone's journey. So it's an exciting process. You got to throw yourself into it.
In terms of funding the venture, how did you go about that? Who did you talk to first?
Yeah.
And who helped you in the end?
Yeah, I suppose, again, we were quite lucky with our first, the first family business, growing up in that, me and Will, we were known as slave labour, we'd be most of my education coming home from high school, or even in primary school, coming home and I'd be in front of the television sticking labels on bags, and growing up in all facets of the business. And we're sort of very lucky, now with Brook Farm we employ over 70 people and it's the business is still flourishing, but again off those core things of why we're in it. So we were able to self-fund, which a lot of businesses and I suppose aren't as such, which we were quite lucky with. So that means that we get to be able to keep that control and set that direction. We're not. Doesn't mean we have to rush to put product in bottle, and if we didn't do it that way, we probably have a different product, and it all comes back to what drives us again. But when we started, we've invested a lot from creating this distillery from scratch, from purchasing of the stills, from all the research and development along the way, and it's definitely not the cheapest thing starting a distillery, especially the way we've done it. But we wanted big believers of if you're going to do it right. And the biggest thing is we've got a story to tell, and that's not a made up story. And hopefully when you come to the distillery, you'll experience that. And we wanted a sport, I suppose, a medium to get that story out there. So how we began before we started putting product on shelf was we ran a crowdfunding campaign through Possible. And the main purpose of that was, first off, we needed some capital. We need some revenue coming in. We've spent so much, and we needed that first revenue stream. So that was so good for us as a business. But more so than that, we wanted to connect with people that, connect with people on a different level about products. It's quite a different thing to talk about, say rainforest regeneration and gin, or spirits. Very different. So that was a medium for us that we could tell our story and connect with, potentially, and still are some of our early customers, and hopefully they get them to believe in what we believe.
So you're obviously a huge advocate for crowdfunding then?
Yeah, big time. And I think it's great. I just heard, I think it's I think it's this month. I think the first equity-based, crowdfunding or possible starting an equity-based model, it's been approved, which is exciting. And I think in this day and age, if you've got an idea, you go back 50 years ago, you'd have a lot of trouble starting a business. But if you've got an idea and you're passionate about that, and that solves a problem, or that's something that other people can believe in, crowdfunding is such a great avenue to connect with people, but to also start that. And it's not just so many people I've talked to. It's not just doesn't mean you just do one and flash in the pan. You can do one crowdfunding just to test it out. Maybe even raise only a couple $100, but it's a great test and trial, and then you can continue on from there. But I think it's great model as well for telling stories, and that's what we're all about.
Along the way, you would have had a lot of struggles, and you mentioned Jim. Obviously, he would have helped you through those sorts of things. Did you have anyone else as a bit of a mentor along the way for you?
I've been quite lucky, I suppose. In the industry, and my time going through the industry, I've always tried to surround myself with people that I can learn from. I think that's one thing. If you're at a point that you can't learn from anyone, you're at the you need to almost go back to the start, or you need to relook where you are. So I always try to surround myself with people that I could learn from. And I suppose, I was very lucky, in my time with South Trade to work with some amazing mentors and people that sort of took me under their wing and really trained me, but also made me strive to go to that next level. So I get itchy feet myself. So I'd be in one role and I'd be like, right, what can I do to get to that next role? And a lot of people used to say, you need to have patience, and it's like, well, I've got patience, but I want to get there. It's like, fair enough. But but during the process of the distillery, in particular, I'd say, my parents in particular, Mum, she's one of the craziest business minds. She's a judge for the Telstra Business of the Year awards now, and we've just got this way in our family. We work so hard and we always run 1,000,000 miles an hour, but there's a way to always sort of bring yourself back and sort of always check in and go, right, are we doing these things the best way we can? Are we being smart about this? But at the end of the day, you need to have fun. If you don't love what you do, or if you don't enjoy what you do, if you think about it, you start it today, you're not going to be happy in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. It's not always about, it's not... If you do it with the intent to make money, that's your thing. That's, I don't know about you, but for me, that's not going to be the best driver, or bring some great outcomes. But a lot of people, I suppose, during my time, but Jim was probably one of the biggest, I suppose, mentors, I'd say for. But it wasn't always, and you have these moments. I remember, it took us a while to get our recipe right, and it's quite funny, you can't help it, but, when you create something, you create it in your silo. Me and Jim were working together on this, and, to create, it's like, you created your baby, and, if you created in this room or whatever, you're the only two people, and, you trust and you know it, but then when you put it out and you start giving it to people, you can't help but sit with bated breath and to hear these thoughts. But I remember when we nailed the recipe, we were in the distillery, and it was probably a moment I'll remember for the rest of my life. And it was when the first spirit, and when we were really happy with it, ran from George, which is the name of our pot still. And it was like, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. I'm almost welling up thinking about it again now. Like there was just such a powerful moment, and when everything came together, and when you're distilling those 26 that we were using and still using now, botanicals running through our still to come out and to create that product, and for it to taste like it was, we were just, it was at a very exciting moment. But you get these moments, and they're the ones that keep driving you, and ones you think back to on days when you're like, you're banging your head against the wall, and it's those little moments you got to keep holding on to, I think.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Super powerful. What is it that you're learning about or exploring right now?
We're doing some fun things, the slow gin that we've got in front of us here is one that has been really, has been really important to me. And this here is pretty much the very first of its kind. We've showcasing, spirits that do, being produced over in the UK, like sloe gin, which is SLOE. So we've quite like it. The first thing, I was chatting with some bartenders today, the first thing they'll go is, you've spelt it wrong. And we spell ours SLOW, and I go, you're kidding me. You've got to. That's it. Back to the drawing board.
Love it.
But, what we've done here is showcasing or playing around with, and I use that word playing around because you've got to have fun with what you do, but aging and showcasing what aging of native fruits in spirit can do. And that is just incredible when this comes to, when it comes to that age note that gets through it. But for us, I always, I always look at something and beg the question, has it been done? If it hasn't been done, why hasn't it been done? And generally, most of the time, it just hasn't been done. And I always like to challenge. People tell you this is the way we make spirits. We always have to use American oak, or we always have to use French oak. And you go, well, why? And when you start looking into it, a lot of the times it's because someone 200 years ago, said it, and we can't help. We're like sheep. So. I get pretty inspired by that, just to go, to always ask why not, and so we're playing around with a few things, especially I like the idea of using native botanicals or native fruits and flavours and rebuilding products that people already have some awareness of, like sloe gin, English sloe gin. We've recreated, or I think showcased a whole different style of spirit using a unique plum which grows in our rainforest, We're working on a limoncello based, instead of lemons, using these white aspen, which is again is a native citrus, or not a citrus, but a native fruit that tastes like lemon lime sorbet. We're working, on some other sort of barrel aging programs, but we get excited by trying new things, and always sort of trying to push the boundaries. And we're 8 months in now, as the years progress, we're going to be knocking out a bit of whiskey down the track. That's not our focus, but us, what we're about is showcasing our region through flavour and through spirits. But there's going to be some exciting things in the future.
Yeah. So what's your biggest challenge at the moment?
My biggest challenge, I suppose, is it's a good challenge to have. I suppose, getting our product out there, and it's always a good challenge to have. It's a challenge anyone would have 8 months into the market. Again, we never sit wondering. We always sort of charge ahead with it. But generally, in the world of spirits, you look at a back bar, and what you've got there is almost a world map of spirits getting made from different countries around the world, rather than getting made in Australia. That's just our back bar, from bourbon to scotch and gin from the UK and tequila and all of this. And it's like, well, where's Australia? Where are we? And the exciting thing is now we're creating this industry. But generally, if you're a producer in Australia, how your route to market would be, you would sell to a distributor. That distributor would then sell to a wholesaler. That wholesaler would then sell to the bottle shop or the bar or this and that. We've done things a bit different. We've sort of taken it upon ourselves to build it ourselves. So not going through a distributor. So we sell it direct to a wholesaler. And in that, rather than a distributor walking through the door, and there's nothing wrong with that model, but it's just not for us. A distributor walks through the door, they're looking after maybe 8 different brands, 12 different brands. Under every single one of those brands is maybe 4 or 5 different products. All of a sudden, where does our story sit in there? So, and we just wouldn't sell right. So
it's interesting, obviously, with your background in distribution, that you're like, cut out them.
That's
which is
it.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Because could it be a matter of inspiring that person to sell your brand?
Yeah.
Or do you think that it's just not possible to do that?
I think it could be, but at the end of the day, you know, they're driven by so many different things, and you know, knowing the distribution model and being, you know, immersed in it and being involved with that for this sort of 8 or so years, it's I don't think you can bring true value to it. And one of them, you know, some very close friends of mine in a business that I hold to the highest, you know, regard, and I still learn a lot from, is Stone & Wood from Byron Bay. Now, when someone walks into your venue to talk about Stone & Wood, they are from Stone & Wood. You know, the culture of that company breathes through the people that are there telling you about that beer, and that, you know, everything about it resonates through that person that's walking in your door. Now, to build that culture and resonate everything through a rep walking through the door looking after a lot of products is a really tough thing to do. So that's why we believe in, you know, in bringing our own people on the ground, you know, like Glenn in Brisbane, you know. And it was funny, we worked together in South Trade for many years, and, you know, very strong friendship. And I remember, you know, just telling him when this was all happening, there was just this excitement, this genuine excitement about what we were doing. And you know, you know, I'm so beyond happy that Glenn's now working with us and you know, spreading that word, because when Glenn walks in and when he talks about Brookies, there's that, it's not just another product for him, it's not just another portfolio, there's a true belief in what we're doing, and I honestly believe that'll, you know, that sort of shows through.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love how you keep coming back to why, because that's what I like to boil down into.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for you
Absolutely.
today.
Yeah.
What's next for Eddie Brook?
What's next for Eddie Brook? Keep knocking on doors and spreading the good word, I suppose. We've got a pretty exciting, you know, it's been a whirlwind of an 8 months, you know, but every day that goes by, every week that passes, every month that goes by is an exciting new milestone. And, you know, we're growing, and we're growing at a rate that we're very happy with. For us, you know, is product development next. We're sort of this year we'll be launching a macadamia liqueur, which will be, you know, showcasing true flavour of macadamia. And macadamia flavour doesn't just come from the nut itself. It's you know, it's looking at the whole tree, which a lot of people have never done before.
I'm excited for that then.
Yeah, that'll be quite fun. And then, you know, whiskey, but for me it's, you know, we've got a lot of work to do with telling our story, and, you know, I think we're hopefully, fingers crossed, going to, you know, look to trickle overseas a little bit next year. But yeah, just generally beating the drum, and I look forward to bringing as many people through the distillery as possible, and so hopefully, you know, they can connect and, you know, sort of get excited, as, you know, you can probably tell, as excited as I get talking about it, or showing people our farm in the rainforest. And, you know, so we've just been 2 months in opening up our distillery for tours. So it's going to be a busy couple of months coming up, but it's something that it's a very exciting time, I suppose.
I'll have to come down for a tour.
Definitely. Drink some gin in the rainforest.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on
Pleasure,
the show today,
mate.
Eddie.
Cheers.
Enjoy the episode? Like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram to stay in the loop at Hospopreneurs. Want to be a part of the show or know a hospopreneur? Send us an email, hospopreneurs@gmail.com. Interviewing creative and innovative minds in hospitality, the Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.